stories for you viewers. Firstly, in previous videos, I have been updating you about clashes between Qemant community members and Amhara security forces near Gondar. Yesterday, we saw a detailed news story by Al Jazeera. An Ethiopian journalist has done this story. His name is Zakaria Zlalam. We have seen him report about atrocities in Tigray, about atrocities in Amhara. So I see Zakaria as largely neutral viewers. We'll talk about his story regarding crackdown on Qemant community in Amhara region in western Gondar. Secondly, just a few hours ago, UN Security Council met in the backdrop of expulsion of 7 top UN officials by Ethiopian government. What happened in the meeting? UN Secretary General and Ethiopian envoy to the UN exchanged serious allegations against each other. I'll share their positions with you. We have some video clips as well. Firstly, viewers, Amhara Qemant tensions. I have been updating you about joint offensives by TDF and Qemant community members near Gondar. We talked about in previous videos that TDF fighters and Qemant community members, they had tried to enter Sudan from. We talked about in previous videos that TDF and some Qemant fighters tried to enter Amhara region from Sudan, and there was fighting in September in some towns on Sudan-Amhara border. A confirmation from Al Jazeera. Ethiopian journalist Zakaria Zlalam has done this investigative reporting. He has shared some satellite images as well from these places, Shinfa, Akel, and other towns where there is presence of Qemant community members. The report says that Ethiopian federal forces, especially Amhara militias, are involved in large-scale attacks on those towns and places where Qemant community lives, and thousands have fled Amhara into Sudan. In September, around 2,000 fled Amhara and they entered Sudan. At Basinda refugee camp, there are several thousand Qemant community members who fled Amhara region due to large-scale attacks on the localities. The satellite images which has been shared by journalists show large settlements which have been burnt. It seems that artillery strikes have been carried out and other types of attacks have been carried out, and these settlements have been set on fire. A confirmation views that TDF tried to join hands with Qemant community members. Qemant fighters, they did try to take up arms against Amhara forces and ENDF while TDF was moving towards Gondar a few weeks ago. But this offensive from TDF and Qemant community members, it failed. And local Qemant community, then it suffered the consequences of some actions by some Qemant community members. So this displacement of Qemant community members is still underway. Situation overall is under the control of Amhara forces. A confirmation that Amhara forces, ENDF, they are in control of border areas, Amhara, Sudan border areas where fighting was underway. In places like Shinfa, Akel, We have discussed about fighting in Shinfa, in Ekal, but now due to large scale operations from ENDF and Amhara forces, situation is under the control of Amhara forces. Qemant community is fleeing Amhara region into Sudan. Secondly, viewers, a few hours ago, UN Security Council met in the backdrop of expulsion of 7 top UN officials by Ethiopian government. What did UN Secretary General and Ethiopian spokesperson say at the UN Security Council meeting? Well, Antonio Guterres said Ethiopian government has not shared anything, any documents about alleged partiality of 7 top UN officials. He says that Ethiopian government is involved in blocking aid. There are official, unofficial hurdles in the delivery of aid to Tigray through afar. Malnutrition rate is very high. Famine has started. Ethiopian envoy to the UN responded. He said, Ethiopia is surprised. Why is this meeting being held? He said that several countries in the past expelled UN officials. Did UN Security Council ever meet after those countries expelled UN officials? Why is that when Ethiopia has expelled UN officials, UN Security Council is holding this meeting? Secondly, he accused UN officials of making up figures. He said that UN officials were involved in exaggerating figures. They were involved in exaggerating the level of crisis which is in Tigray. Take a listen to 2 video statements. First one is from Antonio Guterres, and second one is from Ethiopian government's envoy at the UN Security Council. I think for watching.
With any copy of any written document given by the government of Ethiopia to any UN entity in relation to wrongdoings of any of these 7 members of the UN. And if such a document will be provided, we will of course immediately do an investigation why it did not come to my attention. In August, I warned the Council that a humanitarian catastrophe was unfolding before our eyes in Ethiopia, and since then the crisis has worsened. Up to 7 million people in Tigray, Amhara and Afar are now in need of food assistance and other emergency support. This includes more than 5 million people in Tigray, where an estimated 400,000 are living in famine-like conditions. Humanitarian aid is still not reaching the area at anywhere close to the levels needed. The only option for road transportation into Tigray is along the Afar corridor, where movements are being severely restricted by official and unofficial checkpoints, insecurity, and other obstacles and challenges. Some minor improvements that are welcome did not change the fundamental nature of the problem. Vital food supplies continue to be blocked, as are essential medicines and equipment. Humanitarian organizations continue to lack the cash they need to operate and to pay their staff. Access to electricity remains precarious. Millions of people are cut off from communication networks and vital services such as health care. And fighting in Amhara is another serious impediment to humanitarian access. As a result of all these facts, life-saving humanitarian operations are being crippled. Our colleagues on the ground are sharing increasingly alarming eyewitness testimony of the suffering, including growing accounts of hunger-related deaths. And in locations where screening has been possible, we are seeing acute malnutrition rates that remind us of the onset of the 2011 Somalia famine. We are also seeing deeply worrying reports of violations of human rights abuses perpetrated by all sides. I am particularly concerned about chilling accounts of violence against women and children, including sexual and gender-based violence.
I don't want to hide my surprise in the convening of this meeting of the Security Council. We find it incomprehensible for this august body to discuss the decision of a sovereign state exercised within the domain of international law and sovereign prerogative. There have been several instances where governments had expelled UN staff and other diplomatic envoys for so many disclosed and undisclosed reasons. Did the Council ever meet to vindicate such a decision? Not to the best of our recollection. Mr. President, we truly hoped Council members would have the insight to leave this matter to the government Ethiopia and the United Nations. At the outset, I would like to register our position that the government of Ethiopia is not under any legal obligation to provide justifications or explanation for its decisions. Excellencies, we are obliged to make reference to the basic norms of the United Nations and its humanitarian operations. The General Assembly resolution on guiding principles for humanitarian assistance, 46/182, provides the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and national unity of states must be fully respected in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations. The most fundamental element of the sovereignty of the state has to do with their prerogative to determine who enters, remains in, exists in their territory. When we appeal for support and work with the UN or other humanitarian operators, we have not foregone this fundamental right. Therefore, the government will continue exercising its due right and responsibility on monitoring and screening all humanitarian operators in Ethiopia. Any suggestion to the contrary is unacceptable. As to the legality of the decision, leaving the details aside, the UN itself can be quoted for arguing decisions of persona non grata apply to the UN as well. Mr. President, when it comes to the obligation of UN staff, the rules are unequivocal. Article 101, paragraph 3 of the UN Charter provides all staff members employed